The focus of our interdisciplinary project lies on the testimony of traumatized witnesses in international criminal trials, notably at the extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia.
The main research interest was really to identify what are the impacts of trauma, of suffering, on collecting evidence. So we were trying to find out what are the psychological impacts and also what are the impacts on giving testimony for the victims and of course also for the legal personnel.
We looked at how trauma affects the examination of witnesses in court by the courtroom actors. And in the second part, we looked at how this influences the evaluation of witness evidence by the fact finder.
You see a process which is relying very heavily on witness testimony, but particularly on witnesses, a high proportion of whom we can assume have had experiences which are traumatic to them. Now we don't know what effect that's had on them, but we do know that they've had those traumatic experiences. And so you have a legal process which has a high proportion of traumatic material at its core. And so that brings into play the issue of the credibility assessment of that material. And that's where psychology and the psychological literature has something to contribute.
We were interested if witnesses differ in their testimony depending on the interviewing party.
How the project started in the first place was really an experience that we made with young lawyers monitoring the court proceedings in Cambodia. So we started with a very modest approach by just training the monitors. And we then developed that into a whole module, a workshop that we conducted in Phnom Penh. So the monitors would learn about what happens with memory, what is different if a person has been suffering so much when she then has to give evidence in a court. So that was one important aspect, just to understand what is going on psychologically.
We learned how victims of war crimes, how they can be affected if they suffer from post-traumatic stress disorders, how if they're being put on the stand, they can have flashbacks and this is affecting their memories. So their memory might work in a different way and that might affect their credibility as well. So it's very important for lawyers to know about that.
What happens when you have a traumatic experience is that those coherent verbal voluntary memories tend not to be there or not to be as organised and as well developed. What you do have instead are very sensory, momentary experiences of exactly what happened during that traumatic experience. And these tend to be triggered by situations in the present. And so they they're not under control. These are involuntary memories, and also they don't have a sense of being in the past. So all the emotions, whether it's be fear or shame, that one felt at the time can be there again, for example, in the court. For me, the important thing in the bringing of psychology into the legal domain is to offer a chance for an improved quality of that justice.
The main hope really was to bring across this message to the legal personnel, especially also to judges, that a traumatized victim will not testify the same way as a person who has not gone through such a difficult situation. And that, I think, this message we did bring across. It still needs a lot of work in training people and also finding ways on how to integrate this new knowledge into legal proceedings. And that would really be my main hope for the future, that the research that we conducted will disseminate better and that it will feed into further studies on how to maybe even change procedural rules for future courts.